I never thought moving into Oakwood Estates would turn into a battle of wits with the most entitled neighbor I'd ever met. The neighborhood looked perfect on paper: well-maintained homes, community pool, and reasonable homeowners association fees. What the realtor conveniently failed to mention was that the HOA was run by Karen Wilkins, a 50-something woman with highlighted blonde hair perpetually styled in that classic "I need to speak to your manager" cut. My troubles began 3 weeks after moving in. I had planted some native wildflowers in my front yard to attract butterflies and reduce water usage. They were absolutely within the HOA guidelines. I had checked the bylaws thoroughly before planting. Yet there she was, standing on my doorstep at 7:30 on a Saturday morning, clipboard in hand and wearing a neon yellow vest with HOA President embroidered across the chest in bold letters. "Those weeds need to be removed immediately," Karen said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The HOA has strict landscaping guidelines." "They're not weeds," I explained calmly. "They're native wildflowers approved in Section 4.3 of the bylaws. They're drought-resistant and great for local pollinators." Karen's smile faltered for just a moment. "Well, they look like weeds to me, and as president, I have final say on these matters. I'll expect them gone by Monday, or you'll be facing a $100 per day fine." Before I could respond, she handed me a violation notice and marched away, her white sneakers clicking aggressively against the sidewalk. I didn't remove the wildflowers. Instead, I emailed the entire HOA board with photographs of my garden alongside highlighted sections of the bylaws that explicitly permitted native plantings. I copied Karen on the email and received no response, but the threatened fine never materialized. Round 1 to me. But Karen wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Over the next 2 months, I received violation notices for everything imaginable. My trash can being visible from the street for more than 12 hours after collection, it wasn't. My garage door being left open while I worked on my car, perfectly allowed. And even the color of my garden hose, there was no bylaw about garden hose colors. Each time, I calmly responded with a reference to the appropriate bylaw, and each time, Karen grew more frustrated. "You think you're so clever," she said to me one evening as I was checking my mailbox. She had apparently been waiting for me. "Just because you can quote bylaws doesn't mean you belong here. Some of us have standards." I smiled politely. "I appreciate your dedication to the neighborhood, Karen. Have a great evening." It was becoming clear that Karen's issue wasn't with my compliance. It was with me personally. Perhaps having someone who knew the rules as well as she did threatened her sense of control. My work as a remote software developer meant packages and important documents regularly came to my home. I noticed that some of my expected mail wasn't arriving, but initially chalked it up to general postal service delays. It wasn't until my neighbor Jeff mentioned seeing Karen at my mailbox one afternoon that my suspicions were raised. "I thought it was weird," Jeff said, leaning over our shared fence. She had one of those mail forwarding forms in her hand, and she was looking around like she didn't want anyone to see her. The next day, I called the local post office and discovered that a mail forwarding request had indeed been submitted in my name, redirecting all my mail to an address I didn't recognize. The postal worker gave me the address, and a quick property records search confirmed my fears. It was Karen's house. "This is a federal offense," the postal worker explained with grave seriousness. "Mail fraud and mail theft are serious crimes. Would you like to file a formal complaint?" I thought about all the harassment I'd endured from Karen over the past few months. I thought about the missing package that contained an expensive graphics card for a work project. I thought about the credit card statement I never received, resulting in a late payment. "Yes," I replied firmly. "I would." The postal inspector took my statement and evidence seriously. They explained that mail fraud carries penalties of up to 5 years in federal prison and fines up to $250,000. While I didn't expect Karen would receive the maximum penalty, the severity of the situation was not lost on me. 2 days later, I was working from home when I heard a commotion outside. Looking through my window, I witnessed 2 postal inspectors and a local police officer approaching Karen's front door. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see Karen's face transition from confusion to indignation to genuine fear as they spoke. She gestured wildly, pointed at my house, and eventually disappeared inside with the officials. Later that evening, the HOA vice president, a reasonable man named Michael, called an emergency board meeting that all residents were encouraged to attend. I sat quietly in the back of the community center as Michael explained the situation in diplomatic terms. It has come to the board's attention that our president has been involved in activities that do not reflect the values of our community, Michael said, clearly choosing his words carefully. Karen Wilkins has been temporarily removed from her position pending an investigation into alleged mail tampering, which, as many of you know, is a federal offense. The room erupted in murmurs. Karen wasn't present, but her husband sat in the corner, staring at the floor with a mortified expression. Michael continued. The board wishes to apologize to the affected resident and assures the community that we are cooperating fully with authorities. We will be reviewing all recent violation notices issued by Ms. Wilkins to ensure they were legitimate and in accordance with our bylaws. After the meeting, several neighbors approached me to express their support. It turned out I wasn't the only one who had been on the receiving end of Karen's overzealous enforcement. The woman had been terrorizing the neighborhood for years, using her position to settle personal vendettas and enforce rules that didn't exist. 3 weeks later, I received a certified letter from the district attorney's office. Karen had been charged with mail fraud, a felony offense. She was facing up to 3 years of probation, a $5,000 fine, and had been permanently removed from the HOA board. The letter also informed me that a significant amount of my mail had been recovered from her home, including the missing graphics card and several personal letters. The day after the charges were made public, I encountered Karen in the local grocery store. The once proud HOA president now looked diminished, her shoulders hunched and her expression haunted. When she spotted me, she froze in the middle of the cereal aisle. "You've ruined my life," she said with quiet venom. "I've been let go from my job at the real estate office. Do you know what a criminal record does to a real estate license?" I placed a box of cereal in my cart before responding. "I didn't ruin your life, Karen. You committed a federal crime. There are consequences for that, just like there are consequences for having wildflowers in your yard, except one of those is actually against the law." Karen's face flushed crimson as she processed my words. For once, she had no clever retort, no bylaws to quote, no authority to hide behind. She simply stood there, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. Without another word, she abandoned her shopping cart and hurried toward the exit, leaving behind the trappings of her former reign as Oakwood Estate's most feared resident.